When you're approaching a new work, how would you begin?
Like any researcher, I think you have to lay out what exists already clearly in front of you, and exactly like somebody who was editing a novel or creating anything with a historical basis, look at what the available evidence is.
Excellent to see you again.
Good to see you. What do you have here?
I wanted to show you some of these entries here that were never taken over from the first set of proofs into the second set of proofs. But there are some markings in here.
Yes.
There's some very good ones in here.
Compares badly with the autograph.
It compares very badly with the autograph,
right.
and you can see by this how over-challenged they were with this entire sound complex. And obviously, at the time, the speed with which they had to engrave it. And suggestions that were made by other people that were not as involved in it is clearly something that was entered by someone at the publisher in the correction proofs, and the question mark certainly shows that something seems to be wrong there. The black ink is absolutely clearly Debussy's corrections. And this I found to be a very wonderful example of what can really go wrong. You hardly ever get that 3, 4, 5 colors like that.
Yes. He knew that this score had to go to a copyist to extract parts.
He was practical.
And he knew that the parts would be used by the players to experiment and for him to make corrections. So you find several layers that when the work is performed, he can adapt the parts. And sometimes doesn't adapt the score. Exactly. And eventually the parts go to the engraver to be engraved as parts, and the score goes to be engraved as a score. So you have a situation where even in the printed edition, the score and the parts are not exactly the same.
Intentionally.
And that's where we have to sort it out.
I'm the editor for piano music at Bärenreiter, and I deal primarily with Urtext editions of classical composers. This entails publishing a musical text which reflects the composer's intentions as closely as possible. In order to do this, one has to consult all available sources, including manuscripts, autographs, sketches, and various printed editions. It is also the editor's role to compile findings from the sources in the form of a critical commentary. This consists of a listing where all deviations and diverse readings are documented. Then a proof copy is made for the engraver. When my father, Karl Vetterle, was 11 years old and was on a hiking tour with the Wandervögel youth movement, he saw the little Alcastar, and a friend said to him, "This is the small rider on the Great Bear. If you cannot walk anymore, you can ride on me, just like the small rider on the bear." At that time, he certainly didn't plan to establish a publishing house. The idea to publish song sheets came at a time when he had no startup capital, and the first editions were bound by threading cords through punched holes, and they were produced in my grandparents' living room in Augsburg. In 1923, at the age of only 20, my father founded the publishing house and called it the Bärenreiter. During a singing week, he got to know his future wife, who came from Kassel. In 1927, he moved there with 14 employees and 3 trucks with inventory and stock. On the 8th of March 1945, the publishing house and the family home were completely destroyed by bombs. All the employees lent a hand in the reconstruction. Mortar was knocked from the stones and nails were straightened. By 1948, all the machines had been repaired. And in 1949, 400 Bärenreiter editions had already been newly printed. In his biography, he wrote, "Rarely has a publisher started business so innocently and naively." The major projects, the new Mozart edition, the new Bach edition, or the new Schubert edition, to name but a few, form the publishing foundation which exists to this day and is still being expanded upon. Musicology played an ever-increasing role in the publications. A separate department was created for the concert and opera area. With the creation of the Alka edition, the stage catalogue could be developed further. What I really like is that we have contact with customers from all over the world and that we also frequently travel to meet with them. I've just come back from North America, for example, and that is a very positive aspect of my work. In my job, I'm in touch with customers from all over the world. The commitment and enthusiasm they show us is a fantastic motivation for our daily work here.
If you manage to create an environment of trust, which is rewarded by projects and their success, this will open doors to long-term cooperation. And that's what I work on every day. We have always tried to incorporate the latest musicological findings, and this continues to be the case with our most recent publications. In this way, we emphatically work against the general consensus that everything has been said and done in regard to the great composers. Beyond this, there are, of course, further projects which are in the planning stage. Also some where the boundary between paper and the digital media will somewhat dissipate. This is extremely exciting in the area of complete editions, where the sources can be made available in full detail to the user, and the user can really picture everything. The critical commentary lies alongside the musical text, and one can click through the source material. I think that every generation needs something where one can say, we have not only taken it over, but we have contributed something new that makes a difference.
My name is Chris Jackson, and I'm in Kassel this week to attend the International Sales Conference. And it's a great opportunity to meet together with my colleagues from Kassel and from Bärenreiter Prague. And I know it sounds like a cliche, but working for Bärenreiter is like working for a big family. So even though we're large enough to do these fantastic publishing projects, we feel we're small enough for us to influence, and that our ideas are listened to.
Dem Cellokonzert herausgegeben von Delmar. Das wollen wir fortsetzen, also kritische Neuausgaben wichtiger Titel.
Aber die letztendliche Genehmigung für die Nutzung.
It's great to discover we have similar problems and we can have the time to get together and exchange ideas.
It brings great satisfaction to produce something of cultural value. The other aspect of my work is, of course, that I deal with the quality of paper, which must be suitable for music. This means that the paper must feel good to the touch when turning pages. It mustn't make a noise, and it must not be translucent. I believe our paper fulfills all these requirements. If you imagine that a musician may have to play in unfavorable lighting, it would of course be difficult if the paper had a blinding effect. For this reason, the paper has a slight coloration.
If you're lucky, you'll be working with a composer who's well enough known to have been given a proper catalogue. Most of the standard classical composers now have catalogues, and around this room I think we can see quite a lot of the reference points which will tell you for any given piece when the composer first thought of writing it, what the first sketches looked like, and what the draft version looked like, what the finished autograph said, how that finished autograph was then turned into a published edition, how that might have been corrected later. This is all just text-based. Then I think you can ask more about the effect of the changes and the development in the process of writing the piece, and that should be made available to the performer.
He clearly wants you to notice that the semitones are created naturally by the hand to give you a quality which makes it absolutely clear what is the open note and what is the closed note.
You will find young players who play the natural horn, which is actually the instrument Brahms asked for, or the valve horn, which was an instrument he accepted but didn't prefer, and which is available now. You can make the balance and compare ditto with the sounds of piano. So I think you have to give a certain credibility to the composer's choices.
Now we should put in the modern horn here.
I think performers, two main areas where the performer needs to be helped. One is to do with the programming and performance of music, even familiar music. If they're going to play a Brahms horn trio, it's nice for them to know what the instruments might be, what the sources might say, what the original performances consisted of, what the critics and the public felt about it, what else was in the program. who played it and where, this sort of stuff. The other side that you mention about how the work came into being is only possible, I think, if you show it as a process rather than just a single finished event.
Now that you have done the very, let's see the slow movement with the cello, and then with the modern horn, and then we can...
And sometimes performers have a very wonderful idea. They think, you know, I can see this phrase expanding, and I think at the top there should be a sforzando. If they're clever, they will then look back at maybe the autograph, and maybe they will see that Brahms put a sforzando and then crossed it out. There is a complete personal lesson from Brahms saying, maybe you think this should be sforzando, and I thought so also, but when I tried it with Joachim, we decided sforzando was not very good. And so you only know that, and you can reconstruct it in a rather Agatha Christie sort of way by going back down the process. So the process is very important for the present. It's not just a little bit of history for some academic person. It's what creates the piece that is sitting on your music stand in front of you, and you have to actually make it sing.
Well, to a certain extent, that's a rather radical approach to providing information for a performer.
We may be the first people to do this, yes.
Bärenreiter Urtext. Your next performance is worth it.